Welcome to the Big Change the Film interview series, and my name is Jason Cohen. I personally have lost over 120 pounds, and every week I chat with inspiring individuals who've also lost significant amounts of weight, hear their story, and pass along some of that inspiration to others. Including today's guest and myself, the total pounds lost is now up to 11,025 pounds. I'm excited that later this month I'll be speaking at PBNSG in Detroit alongside Tim Kaufman and Dr. Robert Ausfeld. If you happen to live in the Detroit area and you'll be in town on February 28th, you can find out more information and get tickets at pbnsg.org. Again, that's pbnsg.org. It should be a fantastic night, and I'd love to meet a couple of you guys who are in the area out there. Another thing that I mentioned I'm excited about is that we now have a sponsor through Health IQ, and I'm going to say a few words about them now. The Big Change the Film podcast and interview series is sponsored by Health IQ, which is an insurance company that helps health-conscious people like runners, cyclists, weightlifters, vegetarians, and vegans get lower rates on their life insurance. I was intrigued when they first reached out to me and shared the company's values and mission. My contact Tim even told me about how the company cares for the well-being of its own employees by providing a gym to work out in at lunch, healthy eating options, and much, much more. Health IQ can save health-conscious people up to 33% because physically active people have a 56% lower risk of heart disease, 20% lower risk of cancer, and a 58% lower risk of diabetes compared to people who are inactive. 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33%. They have special rates for those who live an active life, and you can get additional savings by submitting your data through apps like Strava or Runkeeper. Health IQ is the official life insurance partner of USA Weightlifting, Roadrunners Club of America, USA Triathlon, and many more. Go to healthiq.com/BCTF to learn more. Again, that's healthiq.com/BCTF, as in Big Change the Film, to learn more, to help support the show, and to see if you qualify. I appreciate what they're doing with their sponsorship, and 100% of it is going towards the production of this project. Thanks again, Health IQ, for the support. This week's guests are Pam and Chad Dalton, who live in Northwest Arkansas. Pam and Chad grew up in South Louisiana and told me that they grew up eating cheap, greasy, and oftentimes fried food. Pam told me that she was a closet cheese addict, and Chad said that heart disease and high blood pressure runs in their family. After their kids were getting older and being overweight, they realized they just simply weren't being present. They didn't have the energy to do the things they wanted to do with their kids. And they've since combined lost 150 pounds. They've completely turned around their health, what they eat every day, and just their overall well-being, as well as being present for each other and for their kids. One thing that they told me that I love was this: if you live the right way, eat the right things, life can have more essence to it than just existing. We have a fantastic conversation, and I hope that you enjoy. I'm here with Chad and Pam Dalton. I had the pleasure of knowing them through Missing Chin's Running Club, and then also had a great opportunity to run the Louisiana Marathon with them this weekend. And so they have a great story. Together have lost 150 pounds. So guys, first off, thanks for taking the time to spend with me. Maybe we could just start off with a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So thanks so much for having us. We are originally born and raised, well, I am in South Louisiana. Pam is actually born in Texas. And we met up in high school in South Louisiana. And I was born, like I said, in Baton Rouge, but grew up in the Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, Walker area, which is all right there in the same vicinity, if you will. And we met actually in high school. And we're high school sweethearts. It didn't work out, and then we met back up at LSU. So there you go. We're sharing more than just our weight loss journey there. But so it was meant to be. We connected, and yeah, we've been in Louisiana for about 30 years, and we moved up to Northwest Arkansas about 10 years ago, and we've been here ever since.
Wow. So, you guys have lost 150 pounds together. So, you've known each other for a really long time. Were you guys bigger in high school and in college and whatnot? Was it something that you guys put on together later in life, or what did that kind of look like?
Well, she was always the young, attractive, redheaded bombshell. I, on the other hand, was the honey bun loving, double cheeseburger Sonic pre-football game eating lineman. So
That's not
I don't
true.
know. What are your take?
No, I put weight on in college. I was the freshman 15, typical person, and then that 15 grew into 30, and that 30 grew into more with kids, and so it came on slower for me. I didn't have a weight problem really until college.
She's basically saying I gave her one.
I thought, Chad, maybe you were going to say that you had lost 148 and she had lost 2 or something.
Right. That's about right.
No.
Well, you guys are both from Louisiana. Some people watching this may or may not have an idea of, what Louisiana food is, or, there's kind of a certain expectation that when you're here, you eat. So for those who might not be familiar, what did your diet look like growing up and, getting into college and all that kind of stuff?
Well, so my mom was always the cook, and she took a lot of things out of my grandmother's recipes, and so it was beans and rice, it was pork fingers, it was jambalaya, it was gumbo. Anything that had sausage in it was probably the best meal of the week. And it was cheap and it was greasy, right? I mean, that's just kind of how we grew up down there,
And fried.
and fried, yeah. Oyster po' boys, shrimp po' boys, yeah. It was amazing food, but at the same time, you didn't quite understand the impacts it was having on you. And obviously, we're now trying to reverse those now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, were there times in there where you guys realized, like, hey, this is kind of getting out of control? Or, were there attempts made previously in life to try and kind of curb the weight?
Yeah, so in high school, I mean, I was an offensive lineman. I think I got to about 265 in high school, and so looking at where I was going to go after high school, Sergeant Hunter from the Marine Corps decided to tell us about boot camp and how it was equivalent to two-a-days in football. So I said, okay, well, I can do that. So he got me on this American Heart Association diet, which consisted of a cabbage soup. Some days you could eat only beef. Some days you could eat only bananas and milk. And it was this very strict regimen that got me down to about 215 pounds. And I went down to New Orleans and to the MEPS and signed up for a 6-year tour with the Marines. And went to my McDonald's manager's house, Fred Hoover, and we were shooting basketball, and I came down on my knee and ended up blowing out my ACL. And so we didn't end up going to the Marines, but I met my wife at LSU in spring testing right after.
The rest is history.
But I would say that would be the first time I tried to lose the weight, but wasn't too successful because it came back on during the college years.
Yeah. And then, was it ever a conversation with you guys? I know you guys have been together for a long time. When the weight started creeping up for you guys, each, kind of personally, or seeing the other person gaining weight, was that ever a concern? Was that ever a conversation?
I don't think so. I, of course, put weight on having children. We have 3. And I already had I had weight on before we even got pregnant with our first child. And, you just kind of, we had such a deep love for each other. I mean, I loved him for who he was as a person, not for what he looked like. And so the weight never was an issue in that regard to me. It was noticeable for me. Like, I didn't feel my best. I didn't feel like I looked the way I wanted to look for him, but it wasn't anything that we really talked about. We would just talk about maybe going on a diet or trying to eat healthy or something like that. And it was never something that was sustaining over time. It was, kind of yo-yo, quick and in and out. And then we go back to where we were before, gaining weight back or, even more.
Yeah, so I would say that we did quite obviously live the college life. I mean, we were eating beignets, staying out late, going out, doing those type of things where you maybe have a little too many beers every now and then on the weekend, and just really wasn't focused on health as much as we were on working a full-time job, and then also
food that you can afford.
Yeah, eating cheap food. And then also, I had a full-time job. I was working at AT&T Wireless, and so trying to carry a full-time workload and a full-time school load, it was pretty taxing. So like you said, I mean, we probably didn't take the best care of our body, but we were also carrying a pretty, full plate at the same time.
Yeah, it's amazing how good coffee call sounds at 2 a.m. and how cheap it is to get just a big old huge plate of beignets.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I lived my go-to when I first got into college. I lived with my brother. It was a Frito pie. because it was cheap.
Yeah.
Get a can of chili and some Fritos and eat that. And it's horrible now that I think about what we put into our bodies. But it was cheap, and we could afford it. And when you're in college, you're pinching pennies, and you're trying to make ends meet. And that was the start of some really bad habits.
And then did you guys have anything medically going on that were you on any meds, anything like that?
No, I mean, really the only thing I ever had medically going on was a hemophilia. It's a mild bleeding disorder, but it was really nothing related to health from a nutritional perspective. I don't believe. Did you?
No, pretty healthy outside of just having extra weight.
Yeah. Now, I mean, yeah.
You were going to say?
I was just going to add that, high blood pressure, heart disease, all of that runs in my family. It's not stuff that I was thinking about in my 20s, but certainly things that I'm acutely aware of right now.
And then I know you guys have kids. Did the kids play into? I mean, I know it can be tough because whenever you have kids, it means you have zero time for yourself. You care 100% for them and make sure that they make it, safely through, life and are fed and everything else. But, on the other side, you got to be decent, healthy enough to be around for them as well. Was there ever any consideration as far as like, I need to do this for my kids, or did you have any frustrations or struggles as a parent that you couldn't do some things that you wanted to do?
Absolutely. You play chase with your kids, and you get winded, and you didn't have the energy that you thought you should have. And again, it still goes to like you said, having children and them taking all of your priority, that you don't spend enough time on yourself to take that time to say, hey, I need to go and take care of me too, so that I can be better. If I'm better, then I can be better for them. So yeah, I think we both noticed that neither of us in those early years of child rearing that we were our best selves.
Yeah, I would add that, being able to coach Cameron, he's our oldest, through baseball and football, you'd get out there and try to do the drills with the kids and recognize you'd get winded, and it just wasn't as easy as it was for some of them. So it was certainly an eye opener to say, okay, you probably should get a little bit more fit, but really just trying to set the example for them as well. But you want to be around for them because you love them, and you don't want to have something impact your health so bad to where you're making decisions that would take that away from them. So I would say that has weighed on our mind, but it really wasn't the main issue that I think turned it around for us. I mean, we love them dearly, and I know that it's a large part of our why today, but I don't believe that was, the crux that made us turn everything around.
So what happened? Because obviously we're sitting here today. You guys look a little different. Your lives look a little different.
We moved away from Louisiana. I'm just kidding. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
We dearly miss Louisiana. We go back as much as we can. But, honestly, I've been blessed. I've had a pretty decent career at AT&T for about 10 years in South Louisiana. And then we moved up to Walmart here. And we've been working here for about 10 years. And it's been a great ride. We've been blessed with, good opportunities with moving up through different teams within the company. But I'll tell you, in all honesty, I hit some adversity there at work, and it wasn't something that I was used to feeling, considering the track record I had, and the anxiety that was building up in me, the lack of confidence. Quickly just woke up and found myself at 314 pounds. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of anxiety. Obviously, the environment that I was in at the time with some of the folks that were there didn't help matters, but it was more of me not taking care of myself and me being the best person I could be at the time. So I take personal accountability for that. And I did have a team member that told me about running, how much he loved running. He's from the United Kingdom, and how he had done an ultra and a marathon. And I'm thinking, man, that's impressive. This guy's 10 years, my junior. And so he said, you ought to check out this book called, it's Dean Carnazzi. Is it Ultra Marathoner? I think that's the name of it. But so I burned through that book, and I couldn't believe this guy was running 30 plus hours, having pizza delivered to him on the run. I'm like, this is amazing. I could do that. If you could deliver me a pizza and a tall coffee while I'm running. But from there, it just kind of planted the bug. And we started off by doing
sick, fat, nearly dead.
Yeah, sick, fat, and nearly dead. And then we started juicing for about 60 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then, that brings up a good point, because for, some people, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead had a huge impact on me very early on as well. But you come to that realization that you can't juice forever. What did you begin to change? What did you begin to realize? And what did those, what did day 61, 62, 63 look like for you guys in terms of making some of those changes that would be long lasting?
Yeah. So for the first 30 days, we committed, and I don't even remember if we committed to a 30-day fast, but we extended it to that
I think
long.
it was 15 because
We did 2 weeks.
I was not really on board. I did not necessarily think I wanted to do this. But I just kind of had this feeling that I needed to go on this with him. So I was like, all right, I'll do 15. And then
I think we're going to do 30.
And I was like, okay, I guess I can do 30. So he kind of drug me along the way, but I willingly went as well. So it wasn't like I didn't want to go either, but it was his nudge that pushed me along. And it's always easier to do something with somebody than to do something by yourself. And so for him to have success, I felt like I needed to be a part of it as well, and we would both benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Being the math guy that I am, I had a spreadsheet set up at work, and you start tracking, okay, where's my starting weight? And every day you get on the scale, how much am I losing? Because it's got to start falling off. And as we know, it doesn't always work out that way. But I was losing. I think I still have the spreadsheet. It was close to a pound a day.
Wow.
And yeah, it was insane. Crazy. So the momentum just started building. And of course, now I know some of that was water weight, some of that was, waste, whatnot. But the body was obviously showing me improvement through a number that I put a lot of faith in. So I kept going. And day 30, Pam told me, she said, I'll continue, because I said, I think we're going to do this for 60 if you'd like. And she said, well, I've got to eat something. So what we compromised on was eating vegetables for the dinner juice. Instead of drinking, we would have juice throughout the day, and then we would swap out dinner for a vegetable. And so acorn squash,
it
filled
was all
with mushrooms.
Stuff that got you started on the juicing diet, what you led into, those transitional meals. I was like, okay, we can do that. So it was all really kind of the stuff, same with the juicing diet. It was just those transitional meals. And I was like, if I can do that, it was hard with the kids because we were cooking them food. And it was just, I missed eating. I missed chewing on something instead of drinking it. And so I was like, okay, we can probably go another 30 if we eat dinner.
Wow.
And I'll do something good at dinner. It can be one of those vegetables, just give me something. And I really was, the funny thing is that's what I was craving. I think both of us figured out along that journey what we were missing that we didn't even realize we were missing in the vegetables. Just the way that we felt, people were crazy. You're crazy. What are you doing just drinking juice? And it was good for us because I felt different. I felt like I had more energy drinking juice than I did eating the junk that we had been eating for years.
Yeah.
And did you find that, because I'm thinking, you're eating a bunch of fried stuff. I know I keep going back to beignets. But, obviously the things that you were eating prior to the juice was different than what you were drinking and what you started eating. How did your palate change? Because that's a big thing for people, I don't like vegetables or I don't like this. I mean, it was a thing for me. In some ways there are still some foods that are kind of off limits for me. But how did your taste buds and your palate change during that? And how did that kind of maybe set you forward from there?
Yeah.
You're better in this regard.
Well, because you had so much sugar in your body, because you were so addicted to the tall coffees with the syrups and the sugars. And I mean, I overboarded my life on sugar. I mean, in fact, I'll tell you, before we hit this, a friend of mine, Scott Lafferty, practices preventative medicine up here. And he took my blood work. We sent it off, did a Boston Labs, and I was diabetic, had high blood pressure. And so those things kind of just really ticked me off. I mean, I hadn't been that way. I didn't think, or at least I hadn't recorded it to know that I was that way for a long time. But when he told me, Chad, you're a diabetic, it kind of scared the heck out of me. And it connected, will you be here for Pam and the kids? So knowing all the sugar I was slamming into my body for as many years as I did, when you switch to a plant-based approach, or at least that juicing method for 2 months, I mean, I think it was well before then, you start to come off of all those sugars, and you really do. A carrot starts to taste sweeter than it ever has. The acorn squash, just by itself, or a sweet potato, you really start to appreciate the sugar profile of these foods without putting anything additional on them. And it's almost like going to Hawaii and experiencing a sunset. You come back and you try to tell somebody about it, and they're glad you went, but they can't quite understand it. And I think that's the frustration, is that you try to share it with people and tell them, hey, there is a better way, and you don't have to always struggle. But until they push through that detox period, if you will, it's really hard to get them to buy in. But I think for us, I mean, it really set us on a different path of what food could taste like.
And I think for him at least, he was a better eater in regards to vegetables and stuff than
I was always a better eater.
That's not what I meant. But he always, I mean, he would eat vegetables. He had no problem. I was one that was like, no, I don't want that. I would eat a salad, and I was okay with eating salad, but I was not big on the vegetables. And so going into those transitional meals and forcing myself to eat some of that stuff, it did force me to really look at what I liked and what I didn't like. And the taking the sugars and all of the processed, parts of foods that we'd become accustomed to did change. And so I became a vegetable lover, in part because of that. To where I craved those things that I had eaten in those first few days. And then the juices became better as we went too. I remember there was the mean green, and I was like, oh, I can't drink that one. It's gross. And by the time it was over, I enjoyed it. Or coconut water. I remember him giving me coconut water on one of those things, and I was like, that is disgusting. I want nothing to do with that. And then it became a treat. By the time the 60 days was over, it was good to me. I tasted the sweetness in the coconut water that I could not taste when we first started. So it really does. It just cleared that whole, our palates of all of the bad stuff that we had been, putting into our bodies and didn't even realize it. I didn't know what certain things tasted like. I really, truly didn't.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Wow. And then were you guys, on the straight and narrow after the 60 days, or, what did the transition, back to chewing again look like?
Do you remember what that felt like?
It was hard. It was hard because Chad lost more on that than I did. And so he got that number fixation and enjoyed that, whereas I only went down, I think, maybe 20 pounds over the course of those 60 days. And so for me,
which is still a lot.
Yeah.
It is. But I was watching him, and then there was kind of this letdown factor of, that's all? I did all of this, and that's all I got? So it was, that was a little frustrating for me. I was like, this is not kind of how I thought this was going to end. And I think we both kind of went into more of a healthy approach. We wanted to, again, continue to eat more healthy foods. And so we stuck to lean meats and things of that nature. But we quickly, saw ourselves kind of pull away from the vegetables and the things that we had been forcing our bodies to eat. We weren't forcing if it wasn't in a juice. So you can kind of quickly stray away. We didn't put any weight on, but we definitely felt the difference of not having what we had been, having in our bodies for 60 days.
Yeah, I would say that it felt good to have a structure, because Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Joe Cross puts together a program and says, hey, if you just follow this program, you'll find success. So early on, not knowing what we were doing, I felt at least more comfort for me to be disciplined, follow a plan, and then the results started coming. So it's like, wow, you're affirmed that you're headed down the right path. Knowing that the 3 or 4 times before this you tried and you failed, now that mental barrier of, man, no matter what I do, I'm always going to be a fat guy, is now starting to go away, and you start thinking, wow, this number is going down. And so for 10, 15 years, you start to realize you can do this. And not only the vegetable profiles changed for our palate, but also just not eating all the complex processed foods and the sluggish feeling that you felt from that as you cleaned your diet up. I don't know if we knew that at the time, but at least we did know, wow, I'm feeling better. So it was probably at a much more elementary level that we didn't quite fully understand, but it was like, man, when you eat this way, you feel this way. So we started making correlations between the quality of things we put in our body versus how we would feel, even though we weren't exercising at that point. We just felt better.
Yeah.
And
so you had started running a few runs, and that was it.
Well, I didn't really start, I don't think, till around August or so. And when did we start this?
We juiced in July and August.
Okay. So,
the beginning of September is when we ended.
Okay.
Of 2016.
So what did we do from then till? Because I know the last day that we had dairy or meat was really 12/31.
Yeah.
Was that about right?
Yep.
So we just, once we got off the juicing, it was kind of like she said, playing it safe, trying to figure it out, but we were kind of lost. We didn't really know which path to take. Was that when we started watching more Netflix videos?
Yes, that's when Forks Over Knives came over. And I think Scott is the one
right.
that told you about that as well. And, you
Yeah.
know, it was just kind of a trial and error, figure things out. And it seemed
Yeah.
logical at the time because we knew we loved the vegetables, we loved the whole foods, we loved, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily on board completely again with the dairy.
She was addicted to cheese.
I was a cheese addict. But again, I just was like, well, you know, it didn't go wrong for us this way. Might as well try it again. So I was like, you know, all right, sure. So January 1st, we put it down, and that was it.
You know, I will say, because we're connected through him, I was reading through my instant messages on Facebook, and I reached out to Josh Lajani November the 15th of last year and just said, hey, man, wow, I saw your article in Forks Over Knives. So I can't remember if that was the first recipe book they put out, but I remember reading about this Cajun former heavy guy turned ultra runner. It's the same story, right? And I just looked at Pam. I said, babe, look at this.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother and grandfather are from the river parishes. They were in Reserve and in Gramercy. And so while I would go down to the family reunions, we were in Baton Rouge. So when I saw his story, I'm like, man, this is a guy that's from the place where a lot of my family is from. And he actually is up against the andouille sausage. He's up against the gumbos. He duck hunts. I mean, I've never even duck hunted. So this guy is knee deep in the culture, and he's willing to stand up and be courageous. And not only that, but he's running ultra marathons. I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah.
And it just, I think it changed everything, and we started really looking into it.
Connecting the dots and figuring out, okay, this is where we go from here. You know, we've got to cut this stuff out.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure exactly how it's going to work, but we've got to cut it.
Yeah. And then we started the Forks Over Knives thing. We got some books from Santa Claus, and we started looking into it. And I think over this past year, like Pam said, I started running in August. I mean, I don't know how many miles I put in last year, but it was, my first run was like a 12.5-minute mile. Thought I was going to die. It wasn't an enjoyable experience, to say the least. But
no, it was mine.
And then you started not too far after that.
Drug me along for that one too.
I'm noticing a theme.
Yeah,
she just wants to paint me in the best light possible.
You know, it's funny though, because I mean, on a serious note, that was one of the things that, you know, that's one of the things that I think has put us on this course. I've always had an issue. I've always been kind of an independent woman and thought I could take care of myself, do my own thing. And so the thing about marriage and church and stuff was this whole submission thing. And that is something that kind of laid on my heart, you know, just let him lead us. Let him lead you down this road. It can't be that bad. And so for me, that was letting down control that I needed, or that I felt that I needed. It did force me to put that aside and say, okay, I'm just gonna let him lead us and see where it goes. And it didn't let me down, and that's something that has been very important from my part of this journey, to submit. And submission does not mean what we typically think. And it was, you know, okay, I'm just going to do this with him. He wants to do this, I'm going to do it with him. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say having her alongside with me has been all the difference. I mean, she's my conscience. She's my courage. I mean, she's a great counselor. I mean, we bounce things off of each other. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, you know how hard it is. You've lost a lot yourself. I mean, it is a struggle. But when you have somebody in that moment with you, whether it's a dark moment or one that you're having a breakthrough on, when they can understand it at the deepest level, I mean, that you can't pay for that. So, I mean, it's priceless. So love her dearly. And I'm just glad we can share this together. And I'm hoping we can show Cameron and Isabel and Addie, you know, if you live the right way and you eat the right things, life can have more essence to it instead of just existing. Because I do believe while we were parents, we weren't present parents, or at least I wasn't. And I was always involved in coaching. But, you know, you're there physically. But boy, I mean, there's a difference now that I know, being there emotionally as well as just in the now and having the energy to participate, as opposed to just struggling to wait till you get home to watch a football game and drink 2 beers and crash on the couch.
Yeah. Well, speaking of parenting, you know, what's this process been like for you guys, specifically when it comes to the food? Because that's always, you know, a big thing for people. well, you can do it. You don't have kids, or you
Right.
only have one kid, or you only have a parakeet, or whatever it is. Like
Right.
I fully recognize I don't have kids, but it's tough. And so, what has that been like for you guys?
It is a challenge because our kids vary in ages. We have a 14-year-old, we have a 10-year-old, and we have a 5-year-old. So they're all very different and very opinionated in their own right. um, but we also don't want to force something down their throats either. So we cook our foods and we ask them to try it. And we also are trying to be mindful of the things that we know they like to try and make those, comfortable meals for them so they would be willing to try it. They are not 100% on no dairy, no meats. It's difficult because they go to a friend's house and they have cheese or whatever. So, and I don't want them to feel as though they're, odd men out. And I want them to make the decisions we both do. I want them to make the decisions for the right reasons. So we just kind of push them at home to make good choices and what those good choices look like, and try and encourage that when they're outside of our home as well, um, and kind of help them to make the choices for themselves instead of it being forced upon them.
Yeah, I think I heard one of Rich Roll's podcast, if I'm not mistaken, where he's trying to educate his children to make the best decision they can make because you can't live their lives for them. So I think, to her point, I mean, we've got to live a great example. Hopefully, get them to be open to trying things, and if they don't like it, then we move on. But I think this year have found some creative ways. Like tonight, for example, we made a pasta, and I took 2 cans of chickpeas, threw them in the Vitamixer, put a little water in there and pureed them and threw it back in the tomato sauce. And so while they think they're just eating noodles and pasta, they're also getting slammed with some protein. And then we throw some noosh on top of it. And then I'm pretty happy to know that they're getting what they need. So we've got to be more creative as a family to cook in ways that meet them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Another example would be the cashew mac and cheese, because our number 3 is the hardest critic. She's like a 5-year-old bookie, right? I mean, she's got people. She knows people.
Yes.
So we slid some mac and cheese in front of her the other day, and she gave it a thumbs up. It was one that had nutritional yeast and cashews soaked in water, and I think it had a potato and some carrots.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing here? I threw some turmeric in there, and it made it glow. And you just pour that over whole grain noodles. And so what that taught me is rethink the way in which you cook your foods, and don't be afraid to try new things, because what you think has worked in the past,
Yeah.
You have such a broader world to experiment in to get the kids to like it.
In simple ways, like, I mean, we know what our kids like, so they all love their Tex-Mex.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a nachos night, so we'll make corn tortillas and we'll cut them up and we'll put the black beans and stuff on top of it. And so we're just trying to figure out ways to make sure that we put things in front of them that we think that they will like before they've even tried it.
Mm-hmm.
And then at least they'll give it a try. And I think we've had more wins than we've had losses, honestly.
Yeah.
If we're careful about what we put in front of them and how we present it, typically we have more wins.
Yeah. I mean, you think about, black bean burgers. Josh Lajani and those guys talk about transitional foods, where you go to Walmart and you grab the Morningstar burger, right? So we do those for the kids, but we have also made chickpea burgers. Those didn't go over well. I probably messed the recipe up. But we did black bean burgers one time, and they were home runs.
Yeah.
We did potato wedges. You throw them in the oven, you bake them off. So that's my challenge. I told her this year is to make more recipes that will push us in a way that make the kids just find a bigger menu that we can pull recipes from. So it's a work in progress.
But definitely doable.
Yeah.
Definitely doable.
Yeah.
And another thing I'm kind of hearing you say too is that you're willing to spend the extra time and not just drive through Wendy's or Chick-fil-A or whatever, because that is a huge thing for parents. It's like, once you get done working a full day, you got homework, you got kids that are all over the place in ages, but yet still you guys are willing to take the time to make a homemade mac and cheese from cashews and whatnot, and those things take time.
Yes.
It does. And, in full transparency, to help others understand where we are in our journey. I mean, it's not that we do this often, but if we're running around from baseball game to baseball game, or we've got a busy weekend, it's not above us to swing into a Taco Bell and grab a bean burrito. Yes, that's not exactly ideal. The sodium content, minus cheese, yes. But each person gets an item, and sometimes two, and then we get waters and we roll out of there. So, but then I dropped Cameron off the baseball last night, and I went to Starbucks and sat down with a full size of spinach, a carrot, 2 cucumbers. So if it's for us, you can go and grab the stuff from a grocery store, and if it's for the kids, we were in Louisiana for the marathon this weekend, and we went to the Mathern's grocery store down on the square. So we do hit the grocery store, but there are times where we hit, Taco Bell, grab a bean burrito for the kids, or
timing is
nachos.
Just really rough. Yeah.
Right. No meat. And so we try to make it work, but that is probably literally less than what? How often would you say?
It's not often.
Right.
They get really excited when we do go.
It's not 3 times a day like it used to be.
Finally, we get to go.
You guys need more muffins in your life.
Yes. It was great the other day. Addie drives by McDonald's and she said, "What is that, Daddy?" No, I'm just kidding.
So, what about this for you guys? Maybe you can answer separately. What about this journey has surprised you? What does life look like that you just didn't expect?
No, you can go first.
Oh, really? That one. To see my family start to set goals and to have each one of us break through those goals. For example, our 5-year-old, how many months ago? Was it a month ago? December. We signed her up for a 5K. This girl is 5. And so I'm like, sure, she's going to walk this thing, right? Well, she's out here, and I will send you a picture, but this girl's she's got a beautiful stride. She's floating, feet are up off the ground. And Pam's like, well, you can walk some, baby. And she's like, no. And so she's not, she's not stopping. And she'll say, stop and get a little bit of water at the aid station.
Which she was going to run through. I was like, no, baby, we can stop and drink the water.
She says, do you want your waffle now? Because she had a honey stinger waffle. She goes, no, I'll finish that at the end. And she takes off, and we're about, 50, 60 yards from the finish. And I looked at this lady that was about 10 yards in front of her, and I looked at Addie, and I said, get her. And she just took off running, and she smoked this lady. And I was, so to see that, to see our 10-year-old Izzy, start to do 5Ks. Cameron was able to win his age group at the Louisiana Marathon in the half this weekend.
Incredible.
Ran a 1:34. I'm just so proud of them, and beyond proud of Pam, staring down these things that we think are impossible, and now having a body that allows us to go after some of these goals, to really start to repair the mental state that for me has been so detrimental for my whole childhood, because we haven't gotten into, why you eat the way you eat. But growing up, life was obviously not a piece of cake. I had a pretty crazy childhood, if you will. But we've all had experiences. So now pulling out and losing the weight, gaining the confidence, breaking the connection of food to emotion, and starting to understand that food is fuel, man, and seeing Pam and the kids do what they're doing. And of course, I was blessed to have a PR at the marathon as well. So just our family being able to go out and do this makes me wonder, man, where will this group be in 2 years, 3 years, 4? So it just inspires us to stay on this path and share it, and hopefully build some lifelong habits and some memories along the way.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. For me, my background, I'm steering insecurities and issues that I have from my own past of an older brother or 2 older brothers who were athletic, and I didn't see myself as athletic at all, and didn't see myself as someone who could accomplish any of this stuff. And so to be able to do those things, you start to look at yourself differently when you stare in the mirror. And that's probably been the biggest thing for me. It's like, wow, I didn't even know that was in there. And then beyond that is to see my kids and to see Chad and to see them, understand that, if you put your work into something, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to, and showing them not only themselves doing those things, but also through us, seeing us, achieve things. And I know that, I'm my girl's biggest role model. And so I want to present the best that I can for them. And so that's probably what has weighed on me the most in this journey, to try and be the very best me for them.
That's great. So as a married couple, how has this journey, how has the weight loss, how has this new life changed y'all's relationship?
Your turn to go first.
Such a gentleman.
Age before beauty.
Yeah, whatever. We've always had a strong relationship. We've had a good marriage. Have there been ups and downs along the way? Of course, like any marriage, it's never perfect. But I also did not recognize that we could be as strong a couple as we are now, compared to where we were. We have grown so much more together doing this side by side. So much so that, as crazy as it sounds, this second marathon, this was my second marathon in Louisiana. The first one Chad and I did together. And so in the back of my mind, I almost didn't even really qualify myself as being a marathoner, because it was like, oh, I had Chad with me, so it's not really, I really didn't do it by myself, which is crazy. But that's how much we have, relied on one another. So it's been a great experience to have time together. We'll go on morning runs on the weekends, and it's kind of our time where we can touch base and chat and encourage and motivate one another. And so we've definitely grown, I think, even stronger as a couple because of going down this road.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think before you can love someone else, you have to love yourself. And while we have loved each other, we both have very similar backgrounds. And I think it's interesting, the older you get, the more you can see why you came together, even though you didn't quite see it when you were younger. But as we were starting to unpack some of this stuff from the past, and we start to understand who we are and what we're more capable of, to your point, I mean, are you a little bit more confident now in yourself than you were 6 months ago?
Maybe.
So, and here she is going to Louisiana saying, all I want to do is finish, and she ends up PRing, right? So watching people go out and push those doubts and crush them is so rewarding. And as a couple, I mean, yeah, I think we're stronger. The quality time that we get to spend, we're out on the road. Cameron will watch the girls. We'll go out at 5:36 in the morning, go out. We'll be back home for 9:30. So he only has to play referee for a few hours. Nobody's dead, and we're in good shape. So we try to minimize the amount of time we're away from the kids. And sometimes I'll watch the kids and she'll run. And then when she gets home, I'll go. And so there's this juggling act. But at the end of the day, I think because we're all moving forward, it makes us more, it makes us more, we're more aware while we're in the moment, right? I mean, we're not existing, we're living together. So I don't know, it's been great for us, I think.
Awesome. Well, you guys are both now marathoners. Chad, you've done a few 50Ks. What has running become for you guys individually? Like, what does that mean to y'all now? And I'm just thinking about, before you were talking about, you're 100 pounds overweight, and, Pam, sounded like you weren't, super physically active. What is this part of your life, begin to mean for you?
I mean, the one word for me, I'll go first if you want me to, is therapy. It's very therapeutic, and it's very difficult to explain in a world of social media where we're always connected and hitting like and share every 5 seconds. When you can unplug and put your shoes on and go for a morning run and see 10 to 12 deer out on the trail, and the sun is bouncing through the trees, and you're running through a sunset moment when the fog is out there, and you don't need to see anybody else. You're just out on the trail with God, and you're out there not worried about time. You're just out there to yourself, to your thoughts. People deprive themselves of so many opportunities to go out and reflect and just be. And to me, it's been very therapeutic. I mean, that's what comes to mind, is because I feel like if you can get away from the noise and you can get out on your own, if you go and run with your wife or you go run with a group of friends, it's just so healthy for you to be able to get out and experience life. And I don't know, it's meant the world to me. How about you?
Well, again, I wasn't much on board with this whole idea at first. I did not. I was like, "You want me to run? Are you kidding me? Like, we might be pushing this too far." but it has been the greatest gift I think he could have given me, because it has pushed me outside of myself. It has become kind of spiritual for me in a lot of ways too. It is my time to talk with God and to listen and to, um, kind of reinvent who I feel I really am as opposed to what I used to see. Um, and so I wouldn't give it up. We kind of laughed. I mean, everything has been kind of bucket list for me. I'm like, okay, I'll do one with you, one marathon, but that's it. I was like, all right, I got another one. And so then this morning I even told him, I was like, maybe 50K is doable for me.
Hey.
um, so
She's great too.
I would have never in a million years ever thought that the person that's sitting here today is the same person that was, thinking about these things, a year and some change ago. So it has been a gift to me, and it has taught me so much about myself, that I, like I said, didn't even know I had. So it's a big passion and a love now.
That's great. Well, I'll look forward to. I think we'll be seeing a bunch of each other on the trails this year.
Yeah.
The next two questions, or the next question specifically, I'm curious. Maybe you guys can kind of answer to your gender. But if you could have a conversation with somebody who's at the beginning of this journey, Chad, I'll let you go first again. Who is ready to take that step? Who is not feeling great? And ready to experience some of the things that you're talking about, what would you tell that person to give them some encouragement? And that being a guy.
Yeah. I think it's really difficult to write a certain plan because I should have documented a lot of this thought process as I was going through it. But as I think back over it, I felt like I was trapped in a hopeless situation. I had tried numerous times to lose the weight. I honestly didn't have the knowledge or the education on what the right blueprint to success looked like. So, but if it's even more simpler than that, because when you get back to why did I do what I did, I had to hit a moment in life where I was done, where I was tired of living the way that I was living, and I was ready to live a different way because of fill in the blank. So if this person can identify why it is that they want to change the course of their life, I think that's the first thing they have to do. They have to say, what's in this for me? Why do I want to change? Obviously, I'm not enjoying the path that I'm headed down now. I may not know how to take the right path, but the reason I want to change is because of this. And if they could just truly hone in on their why, then I think that will start to help them understand now I need to educate myself or surround myself with others who have done this. Look up Forks Over Knives. Look up, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Greger. I mean, there's a lot of great resources out there that will teach you a new way to live. And then you just have to be open enough to say, hey, the way that I've been living and the way I've been eating needs to be challenged. And they need to start understanding that if they will push themselves in their comfort zone and start trying new things that these folks who clearly have a path to success have proven, then I think they would start to see the results. But and you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. Once you determine you want to head in a direction and you start receiving resources to help you, you need to have people around you that can help encourage you and pick you up whenever things don't go well, because they're not always going to go well. You're going to fall off the bandwagon, and you need to know that that's normal. We still do that from time to time, right? I may be in the kitchen at midnight and I have a small handful of nuts and I feel like, oh my gosh, I just ate 2 honey buns. But you will shift your addictions from bad things to good things. So this is a journey. This is not something that goes away, like an alcoholic. So I will just tell you, it's something that you have to always work on. And, none of us are perfect, but if you can set yourself on the right path, the momentum that you'll start to build day over day, week over week, will become a very powerful force. And then next thing you know, you'll be months along this journey and you'll be so much stronger. You just got to believe those first few days and weeks and then allow it to grow as you stay more disciplined.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree. I would start off with a why. People that I've talked to, ladies that I've talked to, you have to determine what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then I would encourage accountability with someone.
Yeah.
It's always easier to do something with somebody than to do something alone, because it's easy to feel that isolation and to feel, alone. And so it's so hard to climb those mountains by yourself versus having somebody that you can talk to. So to try and find resources, people who have been down this road and can help. And so I always try and encourage people in that regard. I work at a preschool, and we have a pretty good group of ladies, and so we share, monthly, different things. And I've had the privilege, because they've watched this journey in me and watched how I transitioned, over the course of, a year and a half, and just, you never know when someone's watching your story or listening or hearing or seeing the things that you're doing, and what kind of effect that can have on them. And so, I always, when someone asks me a question, I'm always willing to just kind of explain where I'm at and what I'm doing, but not in a pushy way, because the last thing you want someone to do is to tell you exactly what they need to do, because I don't have the answers. I just have my story, and I just have what's working for me, and I try and encourage in that way.
And I would also add, when I started, one of Josh's biggest lines was, "Don't make it complicated." I was one of the guys that sent him a note that said, "Hey man, so what recipes do you follow and how are you?" And I'm just like laughing now, because you literally go to Walmart, grab a bag of broccoli slaw, get an apple, cut it up, throw it on top. Like, what people need to realize is this is not complicated. I mean, if it was rocket surgery, I would not be where I'm at, right? I mean, it's one of those things. You notice how I combine those two words, rocket surgery.
I like it.
But it's a simple, polite approach. You don't have to worry about what am I going to eat. You start to build this profile of what works for you, and it's really not that difficult. So if you look back and you're confused and frustrated when you start, it's funny when you get 6 months into this with a different paradigm and you look back going, wow, the chains are broke. This is so much easier than I thought. Man, if I could just write myself a letter and send it back to that kid that was lost and confused in high school, how much further along would I be? So don't wait for the right pair of shoes, the right, watch with heart rate. Rich Rolls talked about that, and I was just laughing. It's like, just get out and do, and if you start moving in the right direction, even if you got 10% of it right, in a month from now, you're going to have 20% of it right. So just keep moving in the right direction and fail forward, right? I mean, just keep learning. It's not hard, though. It's just what they say. We heard a podcast this weekend. Yeah, it's not complicated. It's hard, and we really liked what that meant, because it's not a complicated formula to success.
Right.
It's difficult. And the reason that it's difficult is because it's going to ask you to wake up every morning and make a decision. Do I want the pain that comes with being unhealthy and not being able to live but to exist? Or do I want the pain of exercise, which is going to unlock so much more of life for me? And you start to realize it's not painful exercise as you start to do it more and more. Obviously, we're running 50Ks. It's obviously very therapeutic. And I know that sounds crazy in the weirdest sense, but it's a good feeling, and you start to have this self-worth that you haven't had your whole life. And so people look at you and you're like, man, I'm a fat guy trapped in a small guy's body trying to make up time here. So I think that's why we see life a little differently.
And it has a snowball effect, because, you start small. It's not, you can't change overnight, and you can't expect gains that are huge overnight. I didn't think I would be, a marathoner today. It started with, okay, I got to run a mile long, nonstop, and then it went to 2, and it built upon itself, and it's the same thing with the food. Take away the junk, try and input some more vegetables, input some more good stuff, and take away the bad stuff. And as you start to do that, you start to feel better, and you start to see how your body, changes as opposed to, sitting and being stagnant and not doing anything. It's a snowball effect. It grows on itself.
Yeah.
And you guys kind of hinted maybe a little bit at the answer to this question, but what would you say to your former self? Whenever you guys were both in that place where life looked very different. You were maybe at your heaviest. What would you say to that person to give them some words of encouragement or some kind words?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, my niece sent me a picture not too long ago. It was right after Christmas, and it was a picture of myself, and it was the backside of me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize her. And it was hilarious. It was like, oh my word, I was shocked. Um, it was eye opening, and I look back at her and I think, man, whew, if you'd have done this a little earlier, but at the same time, it's okay because I know that things work out the way that they're supposed to, and that we're supposed to be on our journeys the way that we're supposed to be on them. And I don't know if I would have appreciated it the same way, or I can't go back and say what if. I can just move forward and say that's not me anymore. This is me, and this is who I want to be. And I want to, I want to keep moving in this direction. I want to keep finding the better parts of me that have been buried for years and that I didn't even know exist. And so I guess I don't know that I would go back, but I definitely appreciate looking back and seeing where I've come from to where I have gone.
Yeah. I would just tell myself that I'm stronger than I believe I am. It's so simple to see now when you look back the false paradigm that you just imprisoned yourself with. It's almost like the elephant that's at the circus where he grew up as a baby with a ball on his leg, right? But when he grows up, they cut the ball off, but they leave the chain and he never moves because he thinks that he's locked down. And those barriers that we put on ourselves, those limits that say, oh, you can, or oh, you're not worth anything, it's all the baggage from your past. And it's hard for that person who doesn't believe in themselves to all of a sudden start believing in themselves. But I would go back and tell myself that I'm stronger than I believe I am, and that the sooner I start to love myself and start understanding that what has happened to you doesn't define who you are, but it helps to identify who you've become, because it's a part of you, and you need to use that as a strength as opposed to playing a victim, and start to take ownership of your life and start moving in the right direction. But certainly you've got to be more. You are clearly stronger than you believe you are. That would be my message.
That's awesome. Well, if people are hearing you guys' story and want to try and connect, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Social media, Facebook probably.
Pamela Dalton, Chad Dalton.
I get in trouble all the time for that.
Instagram, Pimo77,
Yeah.
C Dalton 5.
Okay, great. Well, I'll include links to all that. And Chad and Pam, thanks again so much for the time. I'll look forward to seeing you guys more this year. And I hope you guys have a great night.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.